You know that character, the one who finds a reason to giggle at, well, everything. The friend who spots a gag in a panic that would paralyze most humans. It's easy to dismiss them, but there is a high probability they've endured some devastating emotional trauma. I'm not talking about a ruined dinner party. I'm not talking about an embarrassing speech. I'm pointing to the type of life tragedies that tear the foundation out from under your feet while you're still trying to stand. Let me sketch the scenario for you. Somebody steals their cab in a rainstorm. Do they bang on the window? Do they curse? No, they're already quietly 4 steps ahead. They're wondering if that stranger is rushing to a clinic, or coping with a nasty divorce, or maybe they just have a bursting pipe at home. Because once you've walked through the heart of a volcano, a flickering candle in a draft, it doesn't feel like a threat to the world. Here is the thing nobody tells you about people who have carried a mountain for too long. Their mind isn't a broken clock, it's a high-altitude compass. It's a device that learned to point north even in the middle of a magnetic storm. It was forced to evolve. It had to become this complex survival masterpiece that is still trying to figure out how to function now that the immediate danger has passed. You know, it's a heavy realization, but perhaps it's where the real story begins. Something even more peculiar is happening beneath the surface. These individuals develop a psychological shield against the chaos of life. It's not an immunity to pain, it's an immunity to being shattered by it. They've discovered, through the wreckage, that surviving isn't just a possibility, it is an absolute certainty. This is where the narrative shifts. You would assume that someone who has crawled through fire would be cynical, cold, distant, perhaps even bitter. But quite often, it's the exact opposite. They end up being the most profoundly empathetic people you will ever encounter. They are aggressively empathetic. They can detect a shiver of pain in someone else from across the street. Why? Because they have become fluent in that silent language. A tiny change in your voice? They caught it. That practiced plastic smile? Yeah, they're already brainstorming how to reach out to you later tonight, without making you feel cornered. They have learned how to interpret silence, not just the quiet between words, but the actual weight of it. They can tell if a pause is choking on regret, if it's sharp with irritation, or if it's just collapsing from exhaustion. They sense shifts in the emotional atmosphere the same way a sailor feels a storm in his bones. Most people walk into a room and notice the decor. They walk in and immediately scan the emotional temperature. And here is something truly remarkable. Something that grows out of all that suffering. They often undergo what psychologist Richard Tedeschi identifies as post-traumatic growth. According to his research, over half of the people who endure significant trauma don't just recover, they transform. They are like a forest after a wildfire. The new growth is richer. It is more resilient than the ancient trees it replaced. Their interpersonal anchors become deeper. Their core values become razor sharp. Their gratitude for the most mundane moments becomes almost startlingly intense. They will find themselves moved to tears by a beautiful morning sky, and they don't even care who sees it. But there is a side to this that nobody warns you about. These same individuals often live in a state of hypervigilance. They live in a house where every window is a lookout post. The front door is never just a door, it's a barricade. Have you ever gone to a cafe with someone who must sit with their back to the wall? Or someone who has 5 different plans for a simple weekend lunch? That isn't paranoia, that is a nervous system that learned the hard way. It learned that safety is a privilege you earn, not a guarantee you are born with. And here's a detail that will really make you think. They minimize their own history, constantly. "Oh, it really wasn't that bad," they'll say. "Other people have been through much worse. I'm doing fine, honestly." It is as if they have built an internal suit of armor so thick that even a gesture of pity feels like a poison-tipped arrow. They survived by convincing themselves they were okay. So, admitting that things are actually hard, it feels like an admission of defeat. The irony is heartbreaking. Look at their relationships. People who have been through too much are either fiercely loyal or incredibly guarded. Usually, they are both, at the exact same time. They are a fortress with the gates locked tight, yet they've left a single lantern burning in the highest window for anyone lost in the dark. They will show up on your doorstep at 4 a.m. to help you through a crisis. They won't think twice. But if you ask them to be honest about their own needs, suddenly, they're more elusive than a shadow in a storm. Closeness has always come with a price tag. When your early life taught you that connection is chaotic, your nervous system doesn't relax when someone gets close. It braces for impact. They crave intimacy, but they are terrified of being dependent. In their experience, depending on someone meant you were vulnerable to being hurt. So, they train themselves to need nobody. It looks like unbreakable strength from the outside, until you realize how incredibly lonely it feels on the inside. But then, something incredible happens, something most people overlook. These people become gifted at navigating the unknown. A new career path? Sure. Moving to a different country? Why not? Their whole world collapsing? That's just a typical Tuesday. And the humor, oh, the humor is on another level. Dark humor. It isn't about being cruel, it's about disarming the pain. When you can find something to laugh at in the middle of your own suffering, the suffering loses its power over you. Comedy becomes a shield. Every joke is a small, quiet rebellion against the things that tried to destroy them. Now, here is something that might catch you off guard. Control. People who have been through too much have an intense relationship with control. They will micromanage the tiniest aspects of their daily routine. They'll obsess over it. Yet, they are strangely calm about massive, life-altering uncertainties. Why? Because they've realized that the big things are out of their hands anyway, but the small things, those they can handle. So, yes, they might have a total meltdown over which notebook to buy, while remaining completely composed about a sudden job loss. The contradiction is exactly the point. They are walking paradoxes. They are tough, but incredibly tender. They are guarded, but remarkably generous. They are hopeful, but deeply realistic. They have learned that you can hold two conflicting truths at the same time. Life can be stunning, and it can be brutal, often in the same heartbeat. But here's the part that rarely gets discussed. There is a deep-seated grief underneath all of this. Not the grief of mourning a person, it's the grief of mourning the version of themselves they lost. They grieve the person who used to trust without hesitation, the version of them who could laugh without scanning for the nearest exit, the version who didn't have to rehearse their phone calls or look for hidden meanings in every silence. They grieve the self that felt weightless, the self that didn't worry about being too much for people or not enough for the world. The version that moved through life without their chest locking up at every unknown variable. How do you explain to someone that you miss a version of yourself that you can barely remember? How do you tell someone that you are homesick for a ghost? A childhood you didn't get to experience, a softness you weren't allowed to keep, a sense of freedom you only discovered once it was too late. This grief doesn't break them, though. It sculpts them. It makes them more quiet, more observant, more intentional. It transforms them into someone who treasures peace because they know exactly how much chaos costs. Someone who values safe people because unsafe people taught them how much it hurts to be defenseless. And perhaps that is the real takeaway. People who have gone through too much don't just get through it. They develop an incredibly complex, multi-layered understanding of what it actually means to be a human being. They know that true strength isn't about never falling to pieces. It's about how many times you are willing to pick those pieces up, even when they don't seem to fit the same way anymore. Their survival turned into wisdom. Their agony turned into kindness, and without even realizing it, they became something incredibly rare: a lighthouse. Not because their path was easy, but because they learned how to steer through gales that would have sunk anyone else. A lighthouse doesn't shine because it's flawless. It shines because it has seen the darkness and knows the way out. So, the next time you encounter someone who seems just a little too comfortable with chaos, a little too unfazed by uncertainty, or a little too quick to find the joke in their own tragedy, just realize they have earned that depth. Every laugh, every boundary, every moment of sudden insight. They have been through far too much, and yet, somehow, they are still standing here, still trying, still searching for reasons to believe in something better. It's a strange kind of beauty, isn't it? To see someone so broken, yet so complete. Anyway, that's just how I see it. That isn't just a psychological phenomenon. That is poetry in motion.